Hi everyone, welcome. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Emma Bridge. I'm the Chief Executive of Community Energy England. And welcome to our first regional conference in collaboration with Community Energy South. And I'm really pleased to be here, not just in the southeast, but in Sussex and in Newhaven. I've been speaking to quite a lot of people downstairs that have been just pointing in different directions about all the different community energy projects by different community energy organisations. And it's such a hotbed of activity. And we've got so many members here, so it's brilliant to be here with you. And of course, we're going to hear next from Lewes District Council as well. And they seem to be really showing leadership on this. So you've got a real opportunity there around that strong collaboration as well. And just thanks to Community Energy South for collaborating with us. We actually did our first full day online conference back just after COVID broke, and which was a bit of a scramble and lots of learning for all of us, but it was really enjoyable process working with them. So great that we're doing it here again today. So just to start, on behalf of both CE and Community Energy South, I'd like to give a thank you to our sponsors, to UK Power Networks, Ouse Valley Climate Action, and of course Lewes District Council, who are letting us use this fabulous venue here today. And of course, as ever, without sponsorship, we wouldn't be here together, so thank you very much to them. So very quickly, just a couple of minutes on Community Energy England before I do housekeeping and then hand over to the first speaker. So for those of you that don't know who we are or haven't really come across us that much, so we were formed around, actually, it will be exactly 10 years this year, by a very small group of community energy practitioners who wanted a voice for a growing community energy sector. Hence we were formed, and fast forward 10 years, and we now are representing 300 organisations right across England, the majority of which are community energy organisations, so lots here today. I won't name you all know who you are. But not just community energy enterprises, really important for the growth of the sector is organisations working with and supporting the movement as well. So we've got people here today like UKPN, Parity Projects, Unity. It's really important that collaboration is a growing theme throughout community energy. And over the last few months, I've been doing a lot of work with members, with our board, with other stakeholders, really looking at where CE, 10 years on, should be making sure that we're still impactful, where we should be focusing our efforts. So we have come up with a slightly changed mission just to really focus where we should be having most impact. So our mission now is to create the conditions within which community energy can thrive and scale. And over the next year or two, we'll be focusing on doing this in 3 particular ways. So first of all, supporting a pipeline of community energy organisations across England to grow in scale and impact. So, I mean, a lot of this is already our bread and butter, what we do now. So things like our events, our working groups, our forums, all the resources we've got on our website. Just a side note, we will be getting a new website this year that's much more intuitive, has much better resources on there, so do look out for that. And underpinning this first strand as well is really robust data, so we're going to be doing a lot more around this. And the first part of that is our updated and enhanced state of the sector research. So this week we're piloting a new data portal with a handful of our members, and our survey will be going out to you all in a couple of weeks' time. And that really does form the backbone of a lot of the work we do around policy, around raising awareness, bringing in new funding, support regimes and so on. So when you get that survey, please do make sure that someone from your organisation feeds it in, as it really does make a difference, not just to CE, but to the sector as a whole. And actually a new work stream within this first strand is going to be around a lot more around building capacity and skills. So working with Community Energy South and others to really help, and that's based on feedback from members. So we are right now hiring a heat and retrofit coordinator. So that's a brand new post, a very exciting post to bring together to synergise learning between the retrofit, community retrofit and community heat. And supporting some really exciting projects like Rossendale up in the northwest, then Net Zero Terrace Streets project, Share Energy's Community Heat Network Development Unit. So if any of you are interested, it's not a techie post, it is very much about that coordination, bringing together learning, lots of community outreach. Please do have a look on our website or get in touch. And it's not public yet, but we will be rolling out a new energy learning network as well, working with Ashton, Community Energy Wales, Scotland, Action Renewables in Northern Ireland, and Centre for Sustainable Energy as well. So we will share further details as soon as we can, but please do come and talk to us if there's any particular gaps in your support. We're looking at mentoring, skills training, various things like that right across the UK. So if there's any learning as well from our sister nations as well, then please do come back to us. Secondly is advocating. So advocating for a policy and regulatory environment that supports the growth of community energy. So that's really our voice work. So alongside our ongoing activity around this, obviously a big area of activity will be the general election. Now, this is a huge opportunity for our sector. We've been doing a lot of work with Labour Frontbench, feeding into their local power plan, and also across all parties as well, just to make sure that community energy features. So it could be really transformative depending what happens at the next general election. So we've got lots of resources on our website. Do go on there, lots of support tools for how to make the most in the run-up to the election. And also please do feed back to us anything that you're doing around this, as it's really important for us to help amplify that nationally. And then just very quickly as well, Community Energy Fund, round 2 is out now. So that's an English-wide fund managed regionally. Deadline for that is 8th of April. We've did a lot of work very early on in advocating for this and designing it. And we will be doing work learning from the fund into future rounds and future types of funding. So do feedback to us, how are you finding it? Any feedback that you're getting for the hubs and that sort of thing would be really helpful. And Duncan has asked me to say we've got this feedback form here, which is a call for info on MPs and challenges to growing community energy. Really helpful if you could just take literally 2 minutes to fill this in and hand it back to Duncan, who's sat here.
Or leave on the front desk.
Or leave on the front desk, yeah. And then just very quickly, our third strand is around fostering collaboration across private, public and community sectors. So that's really around raising awareness of community energy and enabling private sector organisations to work directly with and invest in community organisations. So we'll be doing a lot more around funding finance, investment, and also a big comms piece this year as well for community energy. So that's just a little bit of a flavour of some of the activity we're doing. If you're not a member already, please do join us. The more people we represent, the stronger our voices. And if you are already a member, thank you so much. On the next slide is just some of our events coming up. I won't go through those due to time. They're all on our website. One flag is our next members monthly call is on Tuesday, and that's looking at bridge financing. So if you are interested, this is going to be, I think, a growing area for community energy, of a way to really get projects going a lot more quickly, so bringing funding in before you have to go out for share offers. So do sign up for that if you're interested. And then on to housekeeping. So here today we've got Kim, Lisa might still be downstairs, and Duncan from Community Energy England, and Community Energy South staff. Put your hands in the air. Quite a few of you, brilliant. So if you have any issues today, shout out to any of those, ask them if you need support. Wi-Fi is link free, I think. Yes. Yeah, no password, just create an account. Fire exits are that way and that way. There's no alarm planned. If there is one, then go downstairs safely and gather by the riverside. Toilets up here are just along there on the right. Okay. Program printouts downstairs, electronic, scan that QR code, and there's QR codes around the venue if you want to download that. And then straight after this, we're going to have 2 parallel panel sessions. So in here, I'm going to be leading a session on funding and finance. And in 207, diagonally in the corner, Rion and Ollie will be doing a session on local authority and community energy partnerships. And both these topics are going to become really important, even more important for community energy. So if there's more than one of you from your organisation here, it might be worth maybe splitting up and going to different ones. Lunch break is at also to say that looking at the time now, these times are slightly flexible. So we'll be making the workshops ever so slightly shorter, but I think we'll still have plenty of time to get through everything. Lunch is back downstairs, back to the main entrance, and then it's vegetarian lunches available, vegan and gluten-free options. And then after lunch, UK Power Networks are going to be running a series of mini sessions on flexibility, local area energy planning, supporting connections and leaving no one behind. So have a look on your badges and it should say which group you're in. So they're going to be 4 mini groups. So you'll get the opportunity to go around all of those. And that will be in this room. And again, the room diagonal 207. We're aiming to finish at 2:30, but we're not wrapping up till 3. So feel free to hang out, have a chat, have more refreshments. And do please take time to see our exhibitors. So that's Ouse Valley Climate Action, Clean Growth UK, Centre for Energy Equality, Parity Projects, and various local community members. So please do go have a chat, see what they're up to. And that is me very quickly. I'd like to hand over to Ollie.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Emma. Just say thank you, Emma, very much for you. I know I don't need it, but Emily does. Thanks very much, Emma, for coming down and your team. I hugely appreciate all of you coming to Newhaven, to Lewis District, for this forum. I'm on the board of Community Energy England, and it's an honour to sit on your board and work with teams from around the country to help your work at Community Energy England, and it's instrumental in helping the sector move forward, and it's really important. I should say as well, I also sit on the Community Energy Contact Group, which for a long time, which is a central government group, for a long time we thought we couldn't say anything about it because we were on like an NDA, but we are now allowed to talk about it. So if you as groups want to come back and take messages back to a central, we meet about quarterly, so do come and talk to me in the southeast about that. I just wanted to make a point about that because they published it, the government, that we have that group. Why Newhaven and why Lewis? Which is, I just want to explain, in around about 2011, 2012, a number of groups were starting to form, community energy groups in Sussex, and those groups came together and they were Avesco, Besco, Energise Sussex Coast, and also Brighton Energy Co-op. Now, we worked together to set up a year's training for 8 other groups to form like a foundation for 12 groups across Sussex. Not all of them have survived, but a lot of them are still community benefit societies and working. And from that, we set up Community Energy South. Now, what's quite exciting about that, so Besco, Avesco, Energise Sussex Coast, and Brighton Energy Co-op as well, is that all of you have projects in Newhaven. So Beck have just installed 300 kilowatts on the porch down here, and Matt and his team are here. So do speak to them about that, you know, focusing in on rooftops in ports. Kayla and her team did a fantastic project at the Indoor Bowls Club, which is a community building, where they did a big LED lighting, community energy scheme, really innovative. And Kayla and her team and Dan are here today, so do talk to them. Avesco have got schemes around all the schools around this area, but they've also got a big energy advice scheme, and they're a big part of the Ouse Valley Climate Action Programme. And Stephanie's at the back from OVCA, which is supported by South Downs National Park with Avesco. And that's really important because it's a £2.5 million lottery fund focused on energy and nature and climate. And Lewis District Council and all sorts of partners. And they're all swimming around Newhaven as well and supporting Newhaven to get to net zero and give energy advice and everything. So I think that's important. And Energise Sussex Coast down the road in Hastings have been going since that time, about 2012. Richard Watson and Kate, can't see where Kate is, she's somewhere, and who's an amazing trainer for Energy Champions. They've also got big lottery funding at the moment and solar schemes through Sussex, rooftop schemes, and a really interesting model, but giving energy advice. And their lottery fund is looking at the moment at coastal communities and how they can be supported. So it's all happening here in this little corner. So those 4 or 5 groups were based around this part of East Sussex and Brighton. And now look how many community energy groups there are 10, 12 years later. You know, and our vision at Community Energy South is to try and grow those groups, but also expand them so that every district and borough will have a community energy organisation serving their communities, and that's really important. And a big partner in that is UK Power Networks as well, and the whole team from connections, no one left behind, flexibility. So I'm really pleased you're here today as well. But one thing that we've really learnt over the last sort of 5 or 6 years is building the relationships with local authorities, because we're long-term, aren't we? We're the trusted community groups looking to get to net zero and do the right thing and bring people along with us. And there's a real strong link that we need to build with local authorities, and that's a big part of our work. And Rion and I will take you through the engagement element of that in the workshop next door. But and a big part of that locally is Lewes District Council, who have been really supportive to both Avesco and Community Energy South and the community energy sector, and given us this room today. So without further ado, I look forward to talking to all of you at lunchtime and mixing up and having time to speak. But if I could pass over to Zoe Nicholson, the leader of Lewes District Council.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Ollie. It's a real honour to be able to be here today and to welcome you all to Newhaven. Newhaven, for those of you that don't know, is one of the most deprived places in our district, and it's right that we are meeting here. We moved the council out of Lewes, which is one of the least deprived parts of the district, to the place where people need us the most. And it's really exciting to have you here today. I think this is possibly our first community conference where we're welcoming in, people like yourself who are, actively engaged in travelling to net zero. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing on that. I don't want to steal Emily's thunder, because Emily's going to talk about how important you guys are in the wider work that we do across Lewes District. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming here, and I hope that you, out of today, not only do you get to spread some of your energy and passion that will help inspire future work both here and across the south of England, but also that you get some time to refresh yourself. This work is tiring and exhausting, and hope you get some time to connect with one another and enjoy the time that you've got together. So thanks very much for being here, all of you, and thanks to Ollie and Emma for making it happen. And over to Emily.
Well, you'll be glad to know I'm not going to talk too much about Lewes District Council, because I've been told I've got 3 minutes. So, but within those 3 minutes, I think it's important to say how excited we are to have everyone here today. Lewes District Council, as you'd expect, really one of the few, a growing number actually, of green-led councils in the UK, is really committed to our net zero target. And nobody can reach net zero on their own. And I also, I should say, have a role with the local government association, and I think that's one of the messages that we're always giving, is we all need to work together in order to get there. We need each other. So it's brilliant to have you all here today. My name's Emily O'Brien. My role in the council is I'm the Cabinet Member for Climate, Nature and Food Systems, which is a slightly more public-friendly way of saying I'm the Cabinet Lead for Sustainability. So I don't have to spend my life explaining to the public what sustainability is, but now I spend my life explaining to people like you that actually my role is sustainability. So you can't win, can you? So that's that's where I fit into this. We obviously have an ambitious climate and nature action plan, and very key to that is working with many of the groups who are here today. But it's also fantastic to have so many people from wider afield. I suppose just to say, sort of standing here today, this is so lovely because actually this sort of reflects my own life, really my own journey. I moved to the South Coast from London in 1999. My very first job in the environmental movement and in the South Coast was working on a really small project which was around energy efficiency, working with some of the most disadvantaged people. And it was those really early days. Has anyone else been doing this for a quarter of a century in the room? Is anyone yeah, there's I can see a few. I don't know if anyone remembers those conversations where we were trying to work out this new thing that we were calling fuel poverty and what is it and defining it and what is it. And then there was this whole thing about trying to make energy efficiency a thing. It's going to be a thing that people get because it's so important. But actually, it's the least sexy words ever, isn't it? Energy efficiency. It was so hard to get people engaged, to get local authorities engaged, to make people understand it. So I suppose, I feel like I've very much been part of that trying to make something a thing. Now, in terms of energy efficiency, we have people literally gluing themselves to motorways over it, don't we? So, it is a thing. So I think, that says something about the power. I suppose the other thing just to say is it's brilliant that there's so many people here today, isn't it? And I do feel that, what's really inspiring about having a bunch of people together is we cannot do this on our own. As a council, we can't do net zero without you guys. You guys can't do it without us. None of us can do it without government. But also we need each other. And I think we hold an awful lot of the answers by coming together. So as Zoe said, we're totally delighted to be hosting this today. It's really core to what we do. It's really core to what we believe in. And we're really happy to welcome you to share our space with us. Very much looking forward to being part of today and to being part of the next step of growing this movement. Thanks, everyone.
That's a great note to started. If there's any of you at the back that do want to be involved, move forward. But if you're doing other things, that's fine. But otherwise, then don't have to shout quite as much. Brilliant. Okay, so welcome to Finance and Fundraising. Just double checking I'm in the right place. So we've got till, I think, an hour and a quarter, but if you want to stop earlier to have a little bit longer at lunch for a chat, that's fine, but I think we're going to have plenty to talk about. So I would like to start by, could each of our panellists just spend just a couple of minutes just introducing yourself and an overview of how your organisation can support community energy, and then after that we'll go on to other examples, if that's okay. So I'll go this way first of all, so start with you, Otis.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Otis Harrison. I'm very happy to be here today and smell the sea rather than having to go to the NEC, which is invariably where the conferences are. So I work for Thrive Renewables as an investment manager. Thrive have been investing in renewable energy projects for nearly 30 years. 30 years this year. That's wind, solar, got some hydro projects, and more recently batteries as well. We're owned by 7,000 individual investors, so we like to think we're sort of a community energy, even if it's a much wider community, and as well as some institutions as well. We invest in projects that we own, and we own quite a lot of onshore wind turbines. That's what makes up most of our investments. But we also invest and are trying to invest more in community energy projects. So that takes different forms. That can be gap funding or bridge funding, which it sounds like there's a session going to be on later. Funding where we lend to a project and for a long term, but the ownership is retained from the project, and maybe I'll talk about some of those that we've done recently. And also shared ownership of projects. We've got some projects where to be able to invest in larger projects, which is sometimes a focus for communities at the moment, that we invest together and in some kind of joint venture. So yeah, that's a brief intro to Thrive. I'd love to have questions and to understand where people sort of fit and what they want to know. That would be great.
Yeah, we're going to have plenty of opportunities for questions, promise. Whitni?
So I'm Whitni Thomas. I work for Triodos Bank, and we very much still see Thrive as a sister company of ours because it was originally founded as a Triodos company and has now been independent for a number of years. but we share offices in Bristol still. So the bit of Triodos Bank that I'm responsible for is the advisory side. So I don't actually lend out the bank's money. What I do and what my team does is help social enterprises, community energy groups, other types of charities that are looking for investment, and we help them figure out who they could raise that investment from. And in some instances, we will help them raise that investment through our own crowdfunding platform. So if there are people in the room who don't know who Triodos Bank is, we were founded in 1980 for the sole purpose of using money for positive impact, both on people and the planet. And for us, the different transitions that need to happen, obviously the climate transition and the energy transition is very much front and center. And our net zero strategy is called as 1 to 0 because we're very conscious of the need to take everyone with us and to do it in a really socially just manner as well. And so one of the things that we talk a lot about internally is just making sure we don't have too much, what we call carbon vision tunnel of, everything just being kind of narrowly through the lens of what needs to happen in terms of, clean energy and the climate transition, but also making sure that we're looking more holistically. And so, that is why we're always delighted to support community energy because we really feel like it's that beautiful combination of both sides of the equation. So we've lent over £100 million now to over 35 community energy projects. So that's on the lending side. My team has raised over £15 million now. For I think maybe it's 6 community energy schemes, and so I'll be happy to give some examples of some of the ones that we've worked on later.
Great, thank you. Nicola.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm one of a dozen people who work at Community Energy South across counties in the South East and elsewhere where we are invited. So we're spreading and growing in a great transition, which is a really exciting place to be. My role is to help new community energy groups to form. So we gather people, we grow them into an incorporated business, as you're familiar with community energy groups, and we enable them to be capable of delivering projects that best suit them and their place. So it's what matters where. We don't tell them what will work, we help them work out what is best in their place. And an example of success of where we've done this in a really exciting way was in Surrey. So we've worked in Surrey County Council area for quite a while now. We supported 3 very small existing groups to venture into community energy in terms of energy saving. Now this, we had a charity, a community benefit society and a mosque, and neither was strong alone as they ventured towards community energy. So we sought funding for a collaborative project from the UK Power Networks, who were incredibly supportive. And the 3 of them together shared that single pot across costs that were included training from Energise Sussex Coast, the brilliant Kate Meakin, bulk buying of draft proofing materials, and marketing and the actual delivery. Now each of them brought around 10 volunteers to be trained on one day, so they all met each other and worked out who they all were. And as a room of 30 people on that day, they started their energy advice journey together. 3 of them gained employment through that actual £30,000 grant, and they lent on each other to understand how to be employers in this field, and 2 of them for the first time. And importantly, they gathered evidence together. And the outcome of that was the 3 paid roles. So that's really exciting. So not just relying on the volunteer sector to progress community energy. One of them learned how to employ staff for the first time, and that was quite a landmark for them. Thousands of local people who were experiencing vulnerability through poverty got first-hand energy advice from someone they trusted, so someone who was really local. And the evidence of doing all of that was sufficient to work with Surrey County Council to raise an enormous amount of money from the local energy advice demonstrator programme, LEAD, for follow-on funding to collaborate together with the council. So that was massive. So it provided evidence. So that was the bit of outcome that I was most pleased about.
Brilliant, that's great. Thanks, Nicola. And Emma, who, as an aside, is our most recent board member as of 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. A brilliant meeting in Sheffield, so thank you for that. It's fantastic to be here. I'm Emma Lower. I'm Chief Exec at an organisation called Lendology. We're a B Corp social enterprise lender. Now, the reason I'm here is because we're not your normal lender. We've been going since 2005, and we rely on council funding to lend to homeowners across the district. So we've been operating predominantly in the West Country, and only this week we launched a brand new scheme in Merton in London, where they've invested some money with us to enable us to lend to people in the borough of Merton to decarbonise and do energy efficiency measures within their property. So we've been running with around about 15 councils. My dream is that we work with every council, because I don't think small, I think big. So I'm working really hard to talk to every council across the UK for them to consider giving Lendology the money to lend to homeowners. Now, the thing that's different about us as a lender is we charge every single person the same rate of interest. Now, if you're not necessarily up in lending, every time you go to a bank or you look at borrowing, they will look at you as an individual and go, are you good for it? Are you young enough? What do you do? What is your circumstances? They look at that. We don't do it that way. We look at you as an individual. We don't use credit scores, and we charge everybody with our existing partners. It's 4% interest rate at the moment, which is lower than the Bank of England base rate. Now, our councils do that because they recognise the cost of living crisis, and they also want people to decarbonise and nudge people into doing the right things at the moment. Merton, who set up this week, have set their interest rate at 5.5, and that's still pretty much at the Bank of England base rate. So I'm here to talk about when you get to talk to homeowners and you get to talk to people that you're encouraging to decarbonise their homes and they haven't got enough money. We're there to help offer sort of loan top-ups from grants and those kinds of things. But I still haven't got any money from the district yet. So I'm working really hard on that, and also on the county. So I sadly can't lend in this area currently, but trust me, I'm working on it.
Great, thanks, Emma. Are there any questions from anyone, or should I kick off with a couple?
Question.
Okay, great. Introduce yourself first as well.
Hello, I'm Roland Baldock. I'm the Technical Director at Community Energy South, and I also work with some other community groups around the area. I want to ask either Otis or Whitni.
Yeah, confused with sat in the wrong order.
Sorry, Otis or Whitni. In terms of the journey that a community group might have to go on, if they've got an idea of a project that they know they're going to, it's big enough that they know they're going to need some help with, is there anything or any advice you can give on kind of timescales or who to approach, how to approach, and what to expect? Because I imagine this doesn't happen within a week.
Yeah.
It's not, oh shit, we need money, let's go.
Yeah.
It's a bit more than that.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah. Do you want to go first? Or?
Don't mind going first. So I normally break down the two stages of a project into the construction stage and the requirements that you need for that and the funding that you need for that, which is normally what people think of with the funding, and then the pre-construction stage, which is the funding that you need to do all of the permitting and to basically get the project to the stage that it needs to be before it can be financed properly. We, as in Thrive, we invest in the construction stage, so we're more familiar with that. But the stage before that is, in terms of your question about time, where a lot of it comes in. So a couple of the projects that we've been looking at recently, which are two 100% community-owned single turbines, one in Scotland, one in England. Both of those took 5 to 6 years to get to the stage from when they had the idea, both of which, don't know if this says anything about the projects that we look at, both of which were in the pub. The initial idea was first coined, and then, partly the project in England because of the challenges with planning, but there was 6 years of, and we can go into detail if it's useful later, about all of the different permits that are required for a different project. But it's often the planning that is the reason whether it gets pushed back or because of the studies that you have to do that take the time to come back for you to be able to get planning that take that amount of time.
And I think 5 to 6 years is actually quite quick for wind.
Yeah.
There's others like I'm in Towie, and others that it's taken a lot longer than that.
Yeah, and I mean, just to build on that pre-construction phase often lasts quite a long time, and that is where, unfortunately, lenders or people like us who help raise investment funding, that's not the right match at that point, you know. So the kinds of support that community organisations need at that point tend to be more around getting grant support, relying a lot on volunteers at that stage, because it's only when you have the planning, you know, the grid connection agreed, the lease, that you can seriously start to talk about, okay, construction finance and what can be done there. So there is a whole other step and a lot of hard work, I know, and a hard graft that comes to trying to, you know, to get these projects even just to the starting line.
So it's a case of engaging in conversations with the finance partner once you've got planning and grid lined up, basically.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, I'm sure Thrive is the same. You know, we always welcome approaches. We're very happy to have, you know, those conversations, but the conclusion will inevitably be, please come back and talk to us once you're closer, you know, to that starting line. But we're always happy to talk to groups.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having those, even if it's informal conversations early on, is really important. Yeah. Just to touch on the funding, there is funding in Scotland. There's the CARES programme, and in England there's the Community Energy Fund, which was set up at the back end of last year, which is, I understand, being deployed
being very much so.
Yeah,
quite successfully now, which is great, because the projects that, or at least the project that I referenced in England, had a really tough time with getting the funding for the pre-construction stage, and they had to go to various different local entities to be able to get different parcels to be able to last for 6 years and pay all of the advisors, who invariably don't charge less if you're a community group. But yeah, as soon as you have a project and you feel comfortable, I think speaking to somebody who understands the financial model, as I say, even if it's informally, could give you a steer as to whether a project is worth pursuing, because there's the technical side, which are yes or no decisions. Can it get planning? Yes or no. Can it get a grid connection? Yes or no. But then there's a huge swathe of things or specifics to the project which operate on more of a scale, that if for example, if the grid connection cost is too high, that the project won't work. And it's a lot on community groups who don't necessarily have a financial model to be able to determine that, but some funders will give you an input on that.
Cool.
Just out of interest here, who hasn't yet done a community energy project? Few, okay. Who has done one, but it's quite I say simple because none of them are that simple, but where it's just been more funding than finance you've been looking for, so kind of the traditional just shared ownership community energy model? Any of you who have done bigger, more complicated projects that have involved finance? Okay. And how many of you know the difference between funding and finance? Okay, good. Most. Okay, that's fine. I'm just checking what basis we want to stop at. And I did realise that, I know we're not just talking about wind, but I sounded a bit negative about wind there, about that it takes a long time. It does take a long time, but the only wind project last year that progressed was a community-owned wind project. So Ambition Lawrence Western, and they are developing a community model to help roll out that right across the country. So there will be more opportunities on the back of that.
That was the project that we
Was it?
Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. Okay. So, Nicola, really interesting you talking about kind of that collaboration model for bringing in funding. Do you think that's kind of a growing area now for community energy? Should we be looking more at how we collaborate with other organisations bringing funding? Do you have any kind of tips related to that?
Yes, collaboration is really important, not only for your development as an organisation, but for how well you can reach your community, because say two organisations might have a slightly different vision, slightly different focus, or a slightly different cohort of people that they relate to. So collaborating can widen your appeal. It can also be beneficial if your organisation is starting out. Perhaps you haven't got that much in the coffers, so you don't look like an organisation that can receive a massive amount of money, but you might collaborate with someone who's got a stronger governance, a bit more history, a bit more presence. So collaboration is really important. And if you look at the lottery fund that's coming out, the Climate Action Fund, which I think is being released next week, the next stage of it, they talk so much about collaboration. Funders want to see this all the time. They want to see that you're good at it. And that's not just collaborating with other organisations to attract funding, it's about collaborating with people who will receive the benefit of what you're doing. So co-developing with the community. Just collaboration at every stage is really valuable.
Great, thanks. And Emma, building on from what people said previously, any other top tips for those kind of starting out looking at bringing in more money?
I think it is about going to the specialists first, and whilst they said it, the Triodos and Thrive can't necessarily help you to start with, at least they will give you the benefit of their wisdom and save you a lot of time, because we can all get very enchanted with an idea and get writing these massive plans and these ideas, and one conversation with these guys could probably help you, save you a lot of time and set you up in the right direction. And when we're leading on from collaboration, one of the areas we work incredibly closely with all of the community energy groups in our areas, because those are the people who members of the community trust. There aren't many people in this space that members of the community trust other than, I think, community energy groups, because you're the guys telling the truth and you have nothing to gain other than the decarbonisation and supporting people. So we work really closely. So again, when it comes to collaboration, I want to work really closely with community energy groups to work with the council in order to help members of the community. And it's about having that holistic view of what you're trying to do to make sure we all get the right people listening at the right time so that we can drive these projects forward.
So what is it about community energy as part of that kind of, essentially kind of why have you decided to come here today, and what is it that community energy brings to what you're trying to do with councils then? What?
Authenticity and that power and that desire to want to make a difference. All I do is I'm a facilitator for loans. That's all I do. That's it. We're very unimpressive, but we do that bit quite well. You're the guys with all of the knowledge and all of the expertise about what happens in the community, what people want to do and how people want to do it. And we rely really heavily on that pressure coming from you guys to the councils to go, excuse me, we've got hundreds of people here that would decarbonise their properties. All they're lacking is some money. And actually, if we could set up our own scheme, we could then have this revolving fund of money that goes across the community year after year after year. We've lent 22 million in the last 20 years, and we've literally just recycled that money time after time to different members of the community. And it's such a great scheme. I'm just so passionate that every council should be providing this to members of their community, because the council get to set the rate, the interest rate as well. So it's up to them how much they want to support. So that's why for me today is so exciting and important, because community energy is absolutely at the forefront of driving this change.
Great. Dave.
Dave Powis from Home Energy Action Lab in London. A question for Emma on Lendology. There's a large amount of credit risk in what you're doing in any lending.
Yep.
Councils are really struggling at the moment, as we know, some have gone bust. And individuals are also struggling, and that's why you would normally set a higher rate for those that are more risky. So it's amazing that you're setting a standard rate that people take the opportunity, and that councils can decide what rate that they set based on their own finances. How do you manage the credit risk yourself of lending to the council who will then lend to individuals?
So we have a wheeze that we lend to homeowners, and what we do is we put something called a title restriction on the property when someone takes out a loan with us. Now, when you have a mortgage, you have something really massive like a land charge, and it's a really major thing. Title restriction just puts a notification at Land Registry to say that we have a say on what happens to this property. So should the person look to remortgage or sell the property, they have to get in touch with us, and then we will get repaid the outstanding amount of the loan. So we've probably got just short of 1,800 people who've got loans with us at the moment. We've got around about 10 people in arrears, and we've only lost £34,000 having lent 22 million in 20 years. And it's because we get to know people. We care. We're not about bashing out money and going, oh, we're going to make a lot more money and we're going to make profit. We actually genuinely care. So if you need to borrow 12,458 quid, that's what we'll lend you. We won't go, oh, why don't you have 15, or why don't you just take it up to 20? So we lend exactly what you need. We talk to you about your project. We don't just lend money. We're engaged in the whole process, and we help people make good decisions about what they're doing. So that's how we remain so fortunate in making sure people pay the money back. And we have the odd few who go, I don't want to pay, and those I just sort of glare at from a distance, and then we get the money back when they want to sell the house or they want to remortgage. So we play the waiting game. But genuinely, people want to work with us.
And do you, just final question, sorry, put your hand up. Have you got a feel for the type of people you're lending to? Because ideally it's leaving no one behind, isn't it? But some people just simply won't be able to manage it.
So we were set up originally to look at specifically people who were classed as vulnerable. So our lending is based around people who are over 60, people who are on pensions, people who are self-employed, people who are on benefits, and we will lend to anyone who owns a home who can afford the loan. We don't exclude anyone.
Matt?
Sorry, just following on from that. So,
just introduce yourself.
Bright Energy. So a great scheme, but who deals with those people who aren't homeowners then?
So generally those areas are covered more so from grants and from those perspectives. So the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, people who are in social housing have been well looked after. We work with landlords, so we do work with the private rented sector, but it's not the biggest part of our area, but we do work with landlords.
If I can just chip in there. Sorry. With the home upgrade grant programme, that is something that landlords can access to upgrade homes that tenants occupy, provided they put up some finance as well.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not applicable across the whole country, but it'd be interesting.
But people have got it. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, we work with and we do top-ups. So again, if anybody who comes to us who's looking for money, if we know of any free money, that's our job, is to send them off to the free money first and say if it's not enough or they can't help you, come back and we'll help you. We don't just go, great, here comes another loan, because that's not what we do.
Got quite a few hands. I think you were first.
Dan Keeling, Kent Community Energy. We've got a number of projects which we want to fundraise, finance. And I was just wondering, in terms of that, whether it was better whether to individually try and raise finance for a project, or whether to bundle them together into one package and go out to, say, the banks or local authorities. And secondly, what sort of rate of return would we expect from that type of project?
Okay, let's take that, Whitney.
I mean, I would say it obviously all depends, but in general, bundling things together can make a lot of sense. So, for example, we've done some projects where there was a new turbine going up and there was an existing portfolio that had some FIT subsidy, and so we were able to raise the finance required at a better rate because they were bundling it up with existing turbines with some subsidy, whereas the new turbine coming up wasn't going to have any subsidy with it. And then likewise, when it comes to assessing projects, lenders or investors will assess a project which is already operational as lower risk than something that you're trying to develop. So again, sometimes it can make sense if you have some existing assets already that don't have any debt against them and you're trying to develop a new project, to actually look at it holistically, because you should be able to then raise the money at a more attractive rate of interest. I can't really comment in a vacuum around cost of capital for projects, because there's just so many variables in terms of the technology, the size, the life stage. It depends on whether it's kind of large enough for the bank to be looking at it, or whether we were raising money for it through our crowdfunding platform. So yeah, there's just loads and loads of different variables. But obviously, you know, the fact that interest rates have, you know, rose quite sharply relatively quickly has been a big challenge, you know, for a lot of the community energy groups that we're talking to, because obviously the whole equation looks quite different. Obviously there's been higher power prices, which you know, which have helped, but these are all things that it is, yeah, you really do need to look at on a case-by-case basis. I mean, one example that I did want to talk about of a project that we did was with Empower Community Foundation. So they have 2 projects, one in Scotland, one in England. Those projects were initially built with construction funding. They were able to refinance both the projects once they were operational with Triodos Bank as the senior lender, but they still had this quite expensive construction funding with a very high cost of capital. And so what we were able to do was to refinance that. But we went out in March, make sure I get my years right, not last year, but the year before. And whilst the bond offer was open, interest rates just started going up and going up and going up. And in the end, in the first attempt to go out and raise the money, we were able to raise 2.7 million to refinance one of the projects. But then we had to pause, wait 6 months, go back out again for the second tranche of bonds, which had to be priced at a higher rate, but it was still significantly cheaper than what they were paying. So it was still, you know, a good saving for that community energy group. But that's just an example of how you do have to be quite flexible, you know, when you're approaching these things, and then just making sure that the ability to make changes mid-course, if you need, is kind of baked in at the beginning. So it kind of comes back to what Otis was saying, is that it is good to engage with potential finance providers quite early, because we can help to advise about how things should be structured to really hope to deliver the best outcome. So I'm sorry I can't be more specific. I know it's really annoying to not. I'm not trying to dodge it, but I just think it's really, yeah, it's just really hard to put a number on things.
I would add that, I mean, you're coming from the crowdfunding perspective, I guess, and then so if you're able to source everything from crowdfunding, then that's often an attractive option for community groups. We, as part of our bridge funding and for community projects in general, will allow some or all of the money that we lend to be able to be paid down from community fundraise later, so that it's not something that you have to sort out beforehand and stop the project being built while you're raising that money. But when we are looking at projects from a investment perspective, whether we're lending to a project or investing in it ourselves, we would look at every single project individually on its own merit. So if you brought a portfolio, each one of those would still have to work, or we would say we can only lend X amount to this one, that one, and that one, and probably wouldn't have the same. I can understand that there would be effects for grouping them for crowdfunding, but it would be different for a lender or a financier.
What sort of level would you be looking at? I mean, what max size of project would you look at?
For an individual project for Thrive, we would probably lend up to 30 million for an individual project.
I'm talking about the lowest.
Oh, sorry. At the bottom end. Sorry. Maybe 500,000.
Right, so you wouldn't be looking at levels below that?
No.
Okay.
Hi, Kelly Dibber from Community Energy South. Question for Emma. It's kind of few parts of the question, so if you don't mind. So I'm working with some local authorities at the moment through the Pathways programme. Who within the council would you be your first point of call, and what evidence would they need to kind of bring a Lendology into a local authority area?
The question I've been asking myself for 4 years is who do I talk to in the council, because we offer loans for homelessness prevention, for heating, for for just general home improvements, whether it's environmental health, whether it's looking at social care, whether it's staying in your home longer. So we will talk to any part of the council, and we will talk at any level, and whether it's the district or a county council. We don't mind who we talk to, we just talk to someone who's interested in setting up a scheme. What we're then able to do is to understand how much they're looking at potentially putting into the scheme, and we can then model that and give them some indicative sort of costs around how much it would cost and how much possibly income they could generate. Because what we can prove is with running the scheme in Merton in London, running the scheme at 5.5%, potentially they can be making an income from the scheme by year 5. So whilst it might cost them in the initial setup, whilst we're gaining the interest from the loans, we then offset our operational costs against the interest, and off we go.
Brilliant, brilliant. And cheekily, another question. And how how do you work with community energy groups once you're embedded with a local authority?
So we do a lot of cross training. We attend events with community energy groups. We do some support with some sort of advertising if we can. I'm on the community energy group that works across the whole of Devon. We get together once every fortnight, every Monday, and talk about what's going on. So it's just about that deep connection and that deep understanding about what we're all up to, because we'll refer people out to the community energy groups, someone who's come to us, and vice versa. So it is about that, just that understanding of what's really going on, rather than, you know, that high level stuff. So we work really closely.
Just one before you. You're next.
Hi, I'm Steve Masters, Basingstoke Energy Services, which are a solar installer cooperative, workers-owned cooperative. But my question is framed around my work in West Berkshire, Newbury. I'm looking to set up a community energy project or organisation in West Berkshire specifically. What sort of time frame is probably Nicola is probably well placed for anybody, from me gathering in contacts within the disparate groups, because there's many environmental groups and community groups across West Berkshire, but there's no, as far as I'm aware, no community energy project specifically in West Berkshire. What sort of time frame is it if I was to work with Community Energy South to get, you know, an organisation set up and then looking at projects?
Sure. Well, we operate the Pathways programme at Community Energy South, where we contract with a district or more usually a county council to provide free help in setting those groups up. If we were contracted in that place, we would say to West Berkshire Council, you could be looking at a 2 to 3 year programme to set up a number of groups in West Berkshire. Perhaps it would be between 1 and 4 or 5 groups over that sort of geography. Maybe less is better, but quite often depends on how engaged that local authority is. If they're interested in supporting the project as part of their net zero journey, and they will help with the comms, the outreach, and a bit of admin around that group, then you could probably do it quite quickly. At the moment in Surrey, I'm operating a contract. We've worked there for 2 years. We only did the powering down project, so the energy saving. We're just starting off now a 1 year contract to top up that work with one energy generation group. So we're doing it fast. We're finding the people and the sites at the same time. We've been working really collaboratively with them, using all their outreach and all their comms. We've now found 9 fantastic people who want to be directors of a group. I hosted that first meeting last week, been coaching them around what it takes to be a group, what ideal projects might be, what their expectations could be around the timeline for delivering that project. So within a year, I hope, with the county council support, to get that group with their first project underway. Not delivered, but perhaps be at the stage where they've got a share offer that can go out. Now that would be quite fast. But I am also director on Made Energy, which is very close to you. We'd be really happy, in the absence of Community Energy South in that place, to support you to get on board faster.
Because one of my frustrations, I'm a former West Berkshire is a unitary, so they are very financially strapped at the moment. Social care and send budgets are on the edge of overwhelming them. So there is not a lot of money. Is it possible to do it without direct support from the local authority?
Yes, it is. We did it without support, although we did get a 5k grant back in 2011 as a seed fund, seed enterprise fund. But you can do it. There's so much more support out there now than when we started. Yeah, you can do it with no money. You build up some evidence, some collaborations, you get some small pockets of money here and there, you get some pro bono work. Come along, speak to Made Energy, join one of our directors' meetings, and we'll coach you in those initial stages.
I have several potential projects that are your local landowners, local community groups, so I'm not short of projects potentially, it's just enabling it.
Is it the people you're looking for, or the process?
The process.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, speak to me after, I'm very happy to give you some pointers.
Yeah, so definitely do. Community Energy South are great at this, and then there's also support around the governance side from organisations like Cooperatives UK as well. And then also reach out to groups near you, so Reading Community Energy. I don't know how active they are anymore. Before maternity I was in touch with them, but since I'm not sure. But yeah, also reach out to others nearby. Ronan.
Yeah, I have a question for Emma Lower, Lendology. Are you technology agnostic? Could somebody, an individual, say, do they come to you and say, okay, I want to do draft proofing, or I want air source heat pump, or I would like to do X, Y, and Z, and you go, okay? Or are there certain things, ways you think about what you're prepared to fund?
So we work on the basis of the policy that the council sets as to what they will allow us to lend for.
Right.
So we started off very small. They were very the policies were really difficult to access, and what we've done over the last 20 years, what we've proved to the councils is the more money they lend, the better it is for the community. So what we've got them to do is acknowledge that and leave us to lend the money. So we've got some very broad policies that sit in our council partners. As I'm talking to new councils who are thinking of coming on board, part of the service we offer is what policy you're going to have, and let us look at it, because what we've seen is a significant number of areas where unintended consequences happen as a result of them trying to be, well, we couldn't lend to them, or we shouldn't do that, or we shouldn't do this, and it's like, really, would you stop with the nonsense and let's just put it so that we can lend to people, and then we'll come to you if we think it's not what you want us to lend for, and you can decide. So we never say we can lend the money until the council have given us the go-ahead.
Okay, so it's the council who are driving the way that the money is going to be loaned out in that regard.
Yeah.
So if they said, oh my God, air source heat pumps over my dead body, then you're not going to be loaning money.
We have one council who won't let us lend any money at all at the moment for gas boilers.
Okay.
Now I commend it, I really do commend it, but I then look at someone who's got no money and their boiler's bust, and I go, oh, I'd really like to lend you some money. But so this is where policy is the problem, where you go, come on, this person needs help, why are we not helping them? It's because the policy says we can't.
Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard from Energise Sussex Coast. I don't think there's an answer to this question, but I hope the panel can come up with one. It needs a bit of context. In 2013, I was at a meeting with a housing association, a private landlord with 500 houses, energy companies, energy experts, council officials, and there was huge enthusiasm for Green Deal and eco. Because of course it would cost the landlord nothing to have cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, even solar panels. But nothing happened. I think the Housing Association, which had 28,000 homes at the time, did a pilot of 200 homes in Kent. So in 2016, there was an offer. By this time, the Housing Association had 50,000 homes from an Australian bank to spend 30 million and put solar on all their southeast and west-facing roofs. They'd had an offer in 2012. They said yes to, but they dithered and the feed-in tariff changed. So the 2016 offer, they said yes to, but they dithered, and it didn't happen because the feed-in tariff changed. So fast forward to 2023. 2 weeks ago, I went to a meeting of the tenants of this housing association. They now have 100,000 homes across the Midlands and the southeast. And it was a very powerful meeting. It was very emotive too. It was set up by someone from Extinction Rebellion, and there were young mothers there whose babies were in hospital through mold and damp.
And the landlords, whether this particular landlord, but also private landlords, were just not responding. And I can't stress enough how damaging mold and damp is to health for the elderly, for babies. You know, if you get asthma before the age of 6, you have it for life. And this is a huge problem, especially in coastal communities. It's anecdotal evidence, but you know, warmer, wetter weather is making damp and mold proliferate. And landlords are just not looking after their properties. So my question is, and going back to what Nicola said, she talked about the HUG grant, the housing upgrade grant. The first round of that, only 21% of that funding was spent. I think in the next 2 rounds it went up to 40 or 50%. You know, there's what? So my question is, social landlords can get 66% retrofit, including solar, paid for by grants. Where are we going to find the other 34%? And what can we as community organisations do? Because I don't think it's okay anymore. I think sins of omission are, in this case, are as bad as sins of commission. Not doing things is no longer acceptable when you can do it. You know, houses have to be warm and dry, they have to be healthy. And there's off-gem modifications that make it easy to share energy now. Easier, still complicated. But what didn't happen in 2013, and I thought would, I just feel is now the time to happen, and we have to really, really, because I'm cynical about private and social landlords. They won't do it unless it's 100% funded. They're not going to pay for it. So you have to give them an offer they won't refuse. And you have to get them over the line. So where is that 34% of the remaining funding going to come from?
I want to try that first.
I'll have a go. I think with the Home Upgrade Grant programme, we're at a stage now where the government is looking at rejigging it because clearly it's not working. You've got district councils have to bid into that fund. They then, that grant is only available to households that which are owner occupied. There is a landlord part of it as well. You've got to be, if it's owner occupied, you've got to be under 36k income. Got to be off gas. It's so restrictive, and I do appreciate that the government has created this grant for the lowest level, the houses that absolutely need it most. And it's not a grant for the individual, it's a grant for upgrading that property, which will probably be there long after the individual is. But I think the government is rejigging that grant now because it hasn't worked. They're trying to look at what does work. So I think now is the time to tell the Greater South East Net Zero Hub what needs to change. And the more we talk about that, the more we can pressure them to provide solutions to those social landlords, private landlords, to work out a way to ease their path. And perhaps it's about showing them the return on the investment for their portion when they come to sell the house. Perhaps some sort of impact measurement has got to happen because HUG isn't working. As you said, the social and private landlords is not working for people. So let's make a collective voice. And is that something Community Energy England can help us with at that point?
Yeah, so I started out after uni on fuel poverty, and it's the one area that in this job I absolutely love, but it's the one area that's just completely saps me when we go in, when I think back as to how we are where we are now. It's just so depressing. But yes, so absolutely, lobbying on these things continues to be a really core part, and actually energy efficiency retrofit is the fastest growing part of community energy. I think because we care about, it's not just about, I mean, climate change is a huge challenge, but it's also about people and places, and that whole thing, it's just changing so much. So yes, we absolutely can help with that. Any evidence to feed in, we absolutely will do. I would say that, and I know it's not answering your question, it's taking a bit of a step back, bigger thing, but I go back to the general election again. Like, if you listen to what's coming out from all parties, it's not, they could be doing more, and it's the retrofit and the energy efficiency that's getting bashed the most from this across all parties, which I just don't understand. So that's where we really need to be putting the pressure on all parties to do more, to step up more on this issue. Emma, do you want to come in specifically on?
It's a real tricky one because We used to have schemes where we'd lend to landlords, but we were only allowed to lend to landlords where the council got nomination rights, so they could say who went into the property afterwards. And we did absolutely 0.0 landlord loans. And again, I went back to the councils and said, honestly, if you really want to make a difference in the private rented sector, you have to remove this restriction. And whilst I appreciate it's possibly not your view of the world, it is going to help this particular group, actually it's giving people who are living in those properties a better standard of living. So they took the restriction off in a lot of the places, and we're now doing a lot of landlord loans. But I was at a meeting yesterday doing a presentation about landlord loans, about how we can improve the lives of people living in damp and energy efficiency and retrofit, blah, blah, blah. And one lady there was absolutely furious about the fact that we would give landlords money where they were going to make a profit. And it is polarising, because those organisations, those major organisations with 1,000 beds and 1,000 homes or whatever, are making a very nice profit, thank you very much, and yet they're still expecting to have something back. Now, I'm about equality, and I would like to incentivise them to do it, but I don't think we should be just gifting them money. We should be actually making them look at the long term and look at the benefits they're going to get over the longer term, and support them as we bridge that gap as they transition. But there's no such thing as free money, and I think, again, we need to get out of this view that we're not going to change people's minds, because they're going to have to change, and they'll either do that through the government sort of mandating those changes from the EPC ratings, or we support them and nudge them into the right behaviours.
We're going to need both.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's we're back to your point about the election. I mean, some of this stuff is just so big, you know, that it's only through regulation and through statutory powers that they're going to be addressed.
If I can just chip in, Richard, I'm doing a pilot project at the moment involving social enterprise Kent to try and get residents in 2 districts in Kent to take up the helpline. And one of the methods that social enterprise Kent are going to do is speaking with landlord associations, landlord groups, to work out how to get residents to take them on in partnership. So I'd be happy to involve you in that project or share the findings with you.
Joe? Sure. I was just wondering about financial solutions. I mean, would you lend to a social network?
I mean, we would. We lend to specialist, we lend to housing associations. We tend to lend not to the really big ones, because they tend to access capital through the bond market. We tend to lend to those that are more specialist, tend to have wraparound care and support targeting certain individuals, and we have done and want to continue lending specifically for energy efficiency and upgrading their stock. But I'm not convinced necessarily that it's just the finance bit that's missing. I personal view, I do think it's the big stick that's missing as well.
Yeah, I've not in my backyard, when it is actually your backyard or your roof or a build that you own is where the challenges with a landlord, again, it's my personal view that it has to be regulations that make them do things rather than incentives that are incurred right around. And we would be able to lend to any renewable energy project, and energy efficiency is included in that, just as a reference was right, but it would, again, probably be more on the commercial side rather than how your residential would be able to do that.
And just to make sure we don't all see you being thoroughly depressed, there are some good things that are happening from a regulation and a statutory point of view. So the PRA, who is the regulator of Bank of England, that regulates banks. I mean, they are forcing financial institutions to have to start reporting on the climate risk of their portfolio. And so whilst that can sound kind of very big picture, 60,000 feet, I know what that looks like in practice for an organisation like ours, which is basically meant, and in a sense it's fine for us because of our portfolio, which is all kind of positive impact, but it still means that all of our relationship managers are having to go out, sit with each of their borrowing customers, go through a list of questions to help assess, the climate risk of that borrower. And so there are tools, I guess, that that can be used and that are being used through the financial system. It's just taking time, and of course time is what we're running out of. So it does take time for these things to trickle down, because then as banks have to start reporting on this, all of a sudden we are going to start seeing changes, but it's just not happening fast enough.
Also on the big picture, actually, are there any challenges, or if we want to lighten it a bit more, opportunities really that are coming up on the financial landscape that community energy should be aware of, and any tips of how to make the most of the treasury place?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say, in addition to, yes, a general election, hopefully a more favourable policy environment, and hopefully lower interest rates, because whilst the period that we had from 2008 to kind of 18 months, 2 years ago, was a bit of an aberration, I don't think, and people here are cleverer than me, certainly don't think interest rates are going to go down, back to 0.25, but direction of travel is for them to go down, is for them to normalise, around a level of 3.5% or something like that. And I do think that will open up some easier funding opportunities for projects that are at the point where they can afford repayable capital. Obviously, there's all the work you've got to do pre-construction to get to there. So I am hopeful, that in the next 18 months, the funding landscape generally will just look a little bit smoother. Worked with a great community benefit society called BARN, which is Broadband for the Rural North, and so they are rolling out just really high quality fibre connections in rural communities that are being overlooked. So all the commercial providers are all scrambling to go out and places where they think the economics work, but they're not interested in lots of very rural places. And so what they do, I'm going to digress for a minute, because it's quite cool what they do. They go out to a village, they get all the residents together, and they basically say, this is our model, but we need you to kind of participate, to do things like negotiate access with landowners and things like that. And as long as 3/4 of the community have buy-in to doing it, that they're able to roll it out and give a really high quality service at a really affordable price. So they're set up as a community benefit society, so asset locked. They're quite successful in doing successive share offers themselves, but they had a crunch point a few years ago where the amount that they were able to raise from those local communities every time just wasn't quite enough, because they had all this demand that they needed to meet. And so we raised a bond for them, in order to really just give them a couple of extra £1 million so that they could really keep going with their rollout program. So yeah, absolutely, community benefit societies that are asset locked. That asset lock is around just really making sure that the assets themselves and the excess returns, excess profits, that they're being driven for someone else. But you can still borrow and you can issue a bond through a crowdfunding platform and raise capital that way, because the return on a bond is absolutely fixed, it's capped, so there's no excess.
So then the asset is not collateral against that?
No, in this instance, it's completely unsecured. Yeah.
So we would be able to lend as well. I think those companies like community interest companies, all the asset-locked entities have been built so that lenders can still lend to them. And the reason that is because you aren't able to have security over the assets if they have a larger value than what the loan is, but you're still the preferred money, so you will get paid back if there is value there. What they aren't allowed to do is sell the assets for anything other than market value, with the money going to anywhere else other than the asset-locked entity. But even if that's the case, if they sell the project and the money goes to the charity, which is normally a charity that is they're nominated, where the asset is locked to, that will still be after the funding is paid down. So that's how lenders can still get comfortable with that.
I know. Okay, so just got a couple of minutes left. On the broadband, Rural North, it's come up a few times in meetings opinion. Actually, one of our board members is a huge advocate of it in terms of learning for community energy in that. So I think it, might interest in that. If anyone has any very last quick questions, but I'll just be asking the panel if there's any of your top tips or advice from your questions that we put to you to prepare in advance that you've not had a chance to mention about, then I'd just like to come up with a top tip that everyone here. There is very quick last question.
Really, well, I hope it's a good question. It's really a funny question, but I've been listening to this. I only did all the club and works group. We set up workspace, so we've got 1,000 people in our jointly domestic created and run initial companies. So we also part of our business has gone on top of it. So we're really community orientated. We want to set up a net zero hub in Brighton, working on that, and possibly one here one day. Because we're talking to the council about that. So the funding question is how do we set up our net zero hub? There's us no profit rather than that, but that would be my vision for it. Is that it would be a place where these questions would be driving people towards everybody here who's trying to set up, community energy hubs and how to it, how to get the money to start it so that everybody can get the information, because the information is there online, but nobody seems to access it. We think that something physical is going to help people.
Sure, that's the sort of thing that I think the lottery, small awards for all programme might be interested to fund. I'd recommend starting small by, say, having a 2-hour space in your local library every 4 days a week or something like that to build up momentum and recognition, and have as a base where people who might want to volunteer could recognise where it's happening, make a contribution, you can get some visibility. And I would say building trust by getting known is really fundamental as you're starting out on something like this. So I recommend creating some stories around some action that you could do in those 2-hour blocks on an afternoon in the library. And you could do that by reaching certain cohorts of people, such as inviting the local MS society along, because people living with MS might, for example, have a very good brain in their heads, but just might not be physically able to get out very often. So they might be able to offer some accounting advice, some legal advice. All those sorts of things are really powerful when you're starting up a group. And things like getting local students to write climate blogs. So all those small sort of activities that you can get going using a stepping stone, because then you're gathering evidence, which is vital when you're trying to attract small funding pots to then grow.
Yeah, we're already working with Davidson and Triodos, and they should know what we can do.
Yeah. Start small, get momentum, gather evidence, and get known.
If you are Community Energy England member, I know there are a few organisations around the country looking at similar things, so it might be worth putting that on.
And there are some great examples of it already happening out there, so give them a ring. There's one Maidenhead called the Eco Hub. Find out how they did it. Use all the traction they've already gained, so that you don't have to stumble. You can get there faster.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so to wrap up then, Emma.
I'm just thinking, what doesn't Nicola know?
Yes.
Amazing, amazing. I would just say thank you for doing all that you do. Keep on doing what you do, and really see the value of your local council and your local people and the local district, and work closely with them, because I think that is the key to making this whole piece work. It's that overarching strategy, and the closer you can work with the councils, then the quicker we're going to get to net zero.
I would suggest getting known. You're already doing some fantastic things, even if they're small things. Make the world know about it so that you can get traction.
Yeah, no, you've had some great advice from that side of the room. I mean, I think just continue doing what you're doing, and with networks like Community Energy England, Community Energy South, because what we find time and time again is that, the slight drawback of having projects led by volunteers is that often this may be the only project that you do, or series of projects that you do, but there will be someone else in the country struggling with the same things you are. So just really continuing that connection and continuing to ask questions. Yeah, because I'll be amazed if anyone has a brand new problem that hasn't cropped up somewhere else that can't be sorted.
I think that's really good advice. I think from my perspective, I'm thinking of a project. If somebody's thinking of putting a solar farm in a field, that they know the landowner, the end goal is to get that built and to get the funding of getting that built. So, as we've discussed, sort of engaging the friendly finance person early to understand exactly, because there is a huge amount of things that you need to be able to sort of secure before you can get a project built. And often we have projects come to us and say, we've got planning permission, but there's quite a long number of things, quite a long list of either surveys or various different things that we would actually need that take months to complete that aren't actually there yet. And I would also say that if you can, as early as possible, whether it's through that same contact, understand what type of advisors you should be using, because there's lots of advisors on the technical side and not the legal side that will say to somebody who's coming to them, yes, I understand renewable energy, I've done projects before, but there is a much smaller number of those that lenders would actually feel comfortable listening to the work that they've done, and that can save a huge amount of time and money for communities if you align to who those parties, who those lawyers and technical advisors should be earlier on. It's good to thrive, and I mean, often people in this room are going to have very similar opinions, but sometimes lenders such as Thrive, who are focused on impact, will have certain restrictions on projects that they're working with. So if, as an example, if the grade of the land, if it's super arable land, we'll have problems funding that. And if there's solar panels that are coming from really dodgy areas of China that have had forced labour, I'm sure there's lots of people in the room that know of the issues there, then it's just to understand what other restrictions might be there so you can just be as prepared as possible. And the last thing would be set up, I mean, it feels quite selfish saying this, but setting up a sort of data room as early on as you can and saving all of the documents and all of the processes that you've been through means that you won't be starting that afresh when you start going through finance, because if and when you get to having a project built, any funder is going to ask for every single thing that's ever happened, touched, or been anywhere near the project. So you can save yourself trawling through your email history from 4 years ago if you can sort of start that from the start. Really boring advice there, sorry.